You're going to put a lot of pressure on Eala, and that's the biggest challenge of the tour.
The world number one is finally on the record about Alexandra Eala, acknowledging the young Filipina's rapid rise and immense potential. While every top player remains dangerous, Eala is proving she belongs among them. On a court just a few hundred meters away, Alexandra Eala from the Philippines stands in tears after securing one of the biggest victories of her career. Her racket hangs loosely in her left hand, almost as if she has forgotten she is holding it, while her right hand covers her mouth and her eyes fill with emotion. Across the net, Aryna Sabalenka, a former world number 3 and 20-time WTA singles champion whom Eala watched on television as a child growing up in Manila, walks forward to congratulate her with a handshake. The scoreboard shows a commanding 6-3, 6-4 victory, and the stadium clock reads 1 hour and 23 minutes. Behind those numbers, however, another statistic is quietly becoming even more remarkable. This is Eala's 6th career victory over a top 10 opponent and her second in less than 48 hours. Lowering her hand from her face, she admits during her on-court interview that she is still in shock. At just 21 years old, Eala entered the WTA 500 event in Berlin on a wild card, unseeded and playing the week before Wimbledon, yet she continues to exceed every expectation. Meanwhile, world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka, who has battled through difficult starts of her own, has already made her opinion of Eala clear, saying she would welcome another opportunity to face her in a final. That statement was not a reaction to this latest victory but a reflection of what she had believed for weeks. Sabalenka's assessment was captured in the full-length ABS-CBN interview titled Born for Center Court, where she spoke about the young Filipina not with mere respect, but with genuine anticipation of what she could become. That interview now provides the perfect backdrop to today's story because what unfolded in Berlin between June 18th and June 20th, 2026, marked the moment when Sabalenka's private prediction became the WTA Tour's undeniable reality. Eala arrived in Berlin ranked outside the world's top 30, unseeded, and with only one career top 10 victory on grass. But she left having firmly announced herself as one of the sport's brightest rising stars. She walked away from Berlin with a career-high ranking, a Wimbledon seeding, and 2 top 10 victories in just 2 nights. When the rankings were updated, the story had completely changed. For most of the season, the prevailing belief around the WTA Tour had been both reasonable and cautious. Alexandra Eala was a gifted young player still making the difficult transition from junior success to the senior circuit. She had produced a breakthrough run at the Miami Open in 2025, defeating 4 top 30 opponents, including Iga Swiatek in the semifinals, but that remarkable week was widely viewed as an outlier. It came on hard courts, in fast conditions, and with the energy of a passionate Filipino diaspora filling the stands. The consensus was that Eala was a talented player who had simply caught fire for one unforgettable tournament. Entering Berlin, she had defeated only one top 10 player outside of that Miami run and had never beaten a top 10 opponent on grass. Even more telling was another overlooked statistic that would soon become important. Her career record against Czech players stood at just 1 win and 13 losses. On paper, she was a player the elite of the tour respected and monitored, but not someone they were actively preparing their game plans around. Then Berlin happened. It wasn't just one upset, it was 2. They didn't come on her preferred hard courts but on grass, and they weren't against fading veterans but against the tournament's number 2 seed one night and the number 6 seed the next. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. No one was asking whether her Miami breakthrough had been real anymore. Instead, the question became whether Miami had been her ceiling, or merely the floor of what she was capable of achieving. The scoreboard tells only part of the story, but it is where the facts begin. Eala defeated Aryna Sabalenka 6-3, 6-4 in the Berlin quarterfinal on June 19, 2026, or the early hours of June 20th in Manila, needing just 1 hour and 23 minutes to complete the victory in straight sets. It was the first meeting between the two players, and Sabalenka entered the match with an outstanding 35-9 record for the season, making Eala's performance all the more impressive. Here is your script rewritten into one smooth, continuous paragraph with improved flow, clarity, and a professional documentary-style tone. Ranked world number 8 and seeded 6th in Berlin, Aryna Sabalenka arrived as a former world number 3 and a WTA Finals champion with one of the strongest resumes in the draw. This was not a fortunate matchup against a lucky loser or a weakened quarterfinal field. It was a top 10 player in excellent form on a surface that has historically rewarded experience, yet Alexandra Eala closed her out from 5-4 in the second set in a service game that Tracy Austin later described as the narrowest and most pressure-filled window of the match. The final score of 6-3, 6-4 almost understates the achievement, but only because Eala had already accomplished something arguably even more difficult just 24 hours earlier. In the round of 16, she defeated second seed Aryna Rybakina 7-5, 6-4. Rybakina, the 2022 Wimbledon champion, is widely regarded as one of the cleanest ball strikers in women's tennis, and her serve on grass is a genuine tour-level weapon capable of controlling matches on its own. Eala took her out in straight sets on what many consider Rybakina's best surface. One victory of that caliber could be dismissed as a moment. 2 of them in less than 48 hours becomes a pattern. And that is where the most important number emerges. Berlin marked Eala's 6th career win over a top 10 opponent, but more significantly, it was only the second time in her career that she had defeated 2 top 10 players in consecutive matches. The first occasion came in Miami in 2025 when she beat Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek back-to-back. 15 months later, she did it again on a completely different surface, against completely different opponents, in a completely different draw. One occurrence can be labeled an outlier. 2 occurrences across 2 surfaces against 4 different top 10 players begins to reveal a genuine trend. The statistics behind how she won are just as compelling as the victories themselves. Svitolina struck 4 aces in the quarterfinal while Eala hit only 1. On a grass court, where serve dominance is often decisive, that should have favored Svitolina. Instead, the match was determined by what happened after the serve. According to ESPN's Match Report and Tennis Channel's broadcast analytics, Eala consistently neutralized Svitolina's first strike, extended rallies, and forced the former world number 3 into uncomfortable patterns that gradually shifted control of the match in the Filipinas' favor. According to ESPN's Match Report and Tennis Channel's broadcast analytics, Svitolina finished with 23 unforced errors compared to just 9 for Eala. The Filipina won 13 of 22 first serve return points and 21 of 42 second serve return points against a former world number 3 on grass. Her own first serve percentage stood at an impressive 69%, high enough to prevent Svitolina from settling into a rhythm or consistently attacking second serves. In simple terms, Eala did not overpower Svitolina in Berlin. She out-returned her, out-thought her, and consistently extended rallies 1 shot longer than Svitolina wanted. That distinction matters because the narrative surrounding Eala over the past 2 years has often portrayed her as a powerful left-hander who wins primarily through pace and aggressive shot-making. Berlin suggested something much deeper. It revealed that her game possesses a second layer beneath the obvious power, a layer built on discipline, tactical awareness, and intelligent point construction. That is precisely what some of the sport's most respected voices noticed immediately, and why the praise began pouring in before the celebrations had even ended. Tracy Austin, a 2-time US Open champion, former world number 1, and member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame, has spent more than 5 decades around the women's game. As a Tennis Channel analyst, she is known for measured observations rather than exaggerated praise, making her assessment especially significant. Reflecting on Eala's victory over Svitolina, Austin remarked, as reported by Tennis Head, "She has been so sturdy mentally. What an impressive last game, down 0-30 and somehow found a way. Served well, did just enough variation with her serve, with her spins, driving the ball to make Svitolina feel uncomfortable." She also highlighted the contrast in unforced errors, 23 from Svitolina compared with just 9 from Eala. The most revealing words in Austin's evaluation were not power, upside, or potential. They were sturdy and variation. Sturdy is a word reserved for players whose mental foundation is already established, while Variation describes competitors who understand the strategic layers of tennis rather than simply relying on raw athletic ability. That was Austin's conclusion after watching Eala in Berlin. And even higher up the ladder, the world number one had already been expressing similar views about Alexandra Eala for months. Aryna Sabalenka's interview with ABS-CBN, titled Born for Center Court, was never a reaction to Alexandra Eala's victory over Aryna Sabalenka. It was her standing public assessment long before Berlin unfolded. The reigning world number one was already speaking about a player ranked outside the elite as someone the tennis world should expect to see competing on its biggest stages. That is the deeper meaning behind this story. Sabalenka was not speaking out in frustration or surprise. She was putting her opinion on the record. Now, the rankings have begun to reflect what those inside the sport have been saying for months. Eala's run to the Berlin semifinals, even though it ended there, lifted her to a career-high ranking of around world number 30, up from approximately number 35 the previous week and from roughly number 49 at the beginning of the season, according to weekly ranking updates published by GMA Network and Tennis 365. That surge earned her the number 29 seed at Wimbledon 2026, a milestone that carries far more significance than a number beside her name. It marked the first Grand Slam of her career as a seeded player, meaning she was no longer the dangerous outsider hoping to upset the draw. She had become one of the players everyone else was trying to avoid. The balance had shifted. Then, on July 2, 2026, Eala defeated Maya Joint in the second round at Wimbledon to reach the third round of a Grand Slam for the first time in her career, becoming the first Filipino woman ever to achieve that feat at any major, a milestone confirmed by Wimbledon's official channels. Just 2 years earlier, the Philippines had never produced a seeded player at a Grand Slam. Now, it had a player advancing into the tournament's second week. Stepping back, the significance extends well beyond one athlete. The WTA is in the midst of a deliberate expansion across the Asia-Pacific region, with the WTA finals moving through destinations such as Shenzhen and Riyadh, the elevation of tournaments like Guadalajara to WTA 1000 status, and a global calendar that has increasingly shifted eastward compared to a decade ago. Into that evolving landscape walks Alexandra Eala as the first Filipina ever seeded at a Grand Slam. That is a milestone for her country, but beneath it lies an even more important tennis truth. Victories over top 10 opponents on multiple surfaces are what separate players who enjoy a brief breakthrough from those who establish themselves among the game's elite. Eala has now defeated top 10 players on hard courts in Miami and on grass in Berlin, including 2 top 10 opponents in the same week. She has yet to record that kind of breakthrough on clay, and that remains an honest gap in her resume rather than a criticism. For a 21-year-old still climbing the rankings, it is less a weakness than the next chapter waiting to be written. That breadth across surfaces is real, and it is something scouts, coaches, and tournament directors monitor even more closely than headline victories because it helps predict whether a player is simply a difficult matchup for certain opponents or a season-long problem for the entire tour. This week, Alexandra Eala stepped into a very specific room, the group of the 32 seeded players at Wimbledon. Aryna Sabalenka is in that room. Elena Rybakina is in it. Jessica Pegula is in it. Aryna Sabalenka is in it. And now, as the number 29 seed, Eala is in it as well, not as a wild card standing on the edge of the picture, but as one of the names at the center of the draw. That achievement is real, but so are the limits that still exist. The same week that showcased Eala's remarkable progress also revealed where her current ceiling lies. Just 24 hours after defeating Svitolina, she faced world number 13 Linda Noskova in the Berlin semifinals and fell 6-2, 6-4. Noskova, one of the WTA Tour's most dangerous young power hitters, had already dominated Eala 6-2, 6-0 at Indian Wells earlier in 2026, and before their rematch, Eala acknowledged the challenge openly. She described Noskova as a powerful hitter despite her young age, praised her experience, and admitted that their previous meeting had been extremely difficult. Eala said she hoped to prepare better, make adjustments, and show what she was capable of. She did exactly that. She competed far more effectively than she had at Indian Wells, yet she still lost in straight sets. That is what a genuine turning point often looks like. In the span of 1 week, a player discovers both her new peak and the boundaries she has yet to overcome. The two realities do not contradict each other. They define the next stage of growth.